You know what separates those who achieve their dreams from those who spend their lives wishing for them? It's not talent, it's not luck, and it's certainly not circumstances. The difference comes down to one simple truth that most people never figure out. Successful people start behaving like the person they want to become long before they actually become that person. Let me tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's a version of yourself that you dream about becoming. Maybe it's the confident business owner who speaks with authority in boardrooms. Maybe it's the loving parent who has endless patience with their children. Perhaps it's the financially free individual who never worries about money again. Whatever it is, I guarantee you can see that person clearly in your mind. But here's the problem, and I want you to be honest with yourself here. How often do you actually behave like that person? You see, most people have this backwards. They think they need to become successful first, then they'll start acting successful. They believe they need to get rich first, then they'll develop wealthy habits. They wait to feel confident before they'll speak up in meetings or take on new challenges. But that's like waiting for the harvest before you plant the seeds. It simply doesn't work that way. I learned this lesson the hard way when I was 25 years old, broke and going nowhere fast. I remember standing in front of my bathroom mirror one morning, and for the first time in my life, I really looked at myself. Not just at my reflection, but at who I had become. The person staring back at me was someone who made excuses, someone who blamed circumstances, someone who had big dreams but small actions. That morning, I asked myself a question that changed everything. Jim, if you met someone exactly like you, would you want to follow them? Would you want to learn from them? Would you even want to spend time with them? The answer was painful but clear. No, I wouldn't want to follow the person I had become because that person wasn't going anywhere worth following. But here's what I discovered in that moment of brutal honesty. I could change that immediately. Not next week, not next month, not when I felt ready or when circumstances improved. Right then, that very day. The truth is, most people live their entire lives waiting for permission to become who they want to be. They wait for the right job, the right opportunity, the right amount of money in the bank, or the right feeling to wash over them. But successful people understand something profound. You don't wait to become the person you want to be. You start being that person right now, exactly where you are, with exactly what you have. Let me share something that might sound strange at first. Your feelings follow your actions, not the other way around. You don't act confident because you feel confident. You feel confident because you act confident. You don't speak with authority because you have authority. You develop authority because you consistently speak with conviction. You don't become disciplined because you feel like being disciplined. You feel disciplined because you consistently do disciplined things. This is where most people get stuck. They're waiting to feel different before they'll act different, but feelings are unreliable. Feelings change with the weather, with what you had for breakfast, with whether you got enough sleep last night. If you base your behavior on your feelings, you'll be as inconsistent as your emotions. But if you base your behavior on your decisions, on who you've decided to become, then you'll develop the consistency that creates real transformation. I remember meeting a man at a seminar years ago who told me he wanted to become a successful entrepreneur. When I asked him what he was doing to develop that identity, he said he was waiting until he had enough money to start a business, waiting until he felt more confident, waiting until he knew more about business. I asked him, what would a successful entrepreneur do today, right now, with exactly what you have? The question stopped him cold because he realized he wasn't behaving like the person he wanted to become. He was behaving like someone who was waiting for someday. Here's what I told him, and I'm telling you the same thing. Successful entrepreneurs don't wait for perfect conditions. They read business books now. They network now. They solve problems now. They think like owners now. They take responsibility now. They dress professionally now. They speak with conviction now. They manage their time like it's precious now. They don't wait until they have a business to start thinking and acting like business people. The same principle applies to every area of life. If you want to be wealthy, start managing your money like wealthy people do today. I don't care if you only have $20 in your bank account. Manage those $20 with the same care and intention that a millionaire manages their portfolio. If you want to be healthy, start making the food choices and exercise decisions that healthy people make today. Don't wait until you feel motivated or until Monday or until after the holidays. You know what's fascinating? When you start behaving like the person you want to become, something magical happens. Not only do you start to feel like that person, but other people begin to see you as that person too. Your confidence grows because you're taking confident actions. Your competence develops because you're engaging in the activities that build competence. Your circumstances begin to change because you're making the choices that create different circumstances. But here's the challenge, and I want to be straight with you about this. It's going to feel uncomfortable at first. When you start acting above your current circumstances, when you start behaving like the person you want to become rather than the person you've been, it's going to feel like you're pretending. Your mind is going to tell you that you're being fake, that you're not qualified, that you don't deserve to act this way yet. That voice in your head is lying to you. It's not being fake to behave like the person you want to become. It's being intentional about your growth. It's not pretending, it's practicing. Every expert was once a beginner who decided to start practicing expert behaviors before they felt like an expert. The question isn't whether you're qualified to behave like the person you want to become. The question is whether you're committed to becoming that person. And if you are committed, then the time to start is now. Not when you feel ready, not when circumstances are perfect, not when you have permission from others. Now, your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. Every moment you wait is a moment you could be practicing the behaviors that will create the life you want. Every day you postpone acting like the person you want to become is another day that person remains a dream instead of a reality. So let me ask you the same question I asked myself in that mirror all those years ago. If you met someone exactly like the current version of yourself, would you want to follow them? If the answer is anything less than an enthusiastic yes, then you know what you need to do. You need to start behaving like the person you would want to follow, like the person you would respect, like the person who is worthy of the dreams you carry in your heart. The transformation begins the moment you decide it begins. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready, the moment you decide. And once you make that decision, every action you take either moves you toward that person or away from that person. There's no neutral ground in personal development. You're either growing into who you want to become or you're staying stuck as who you've always been. The choice is yours and the time is now. Now let me tell you why this principle of behaving like the person you want to become works so powerfully, because understanding the why will give you the strength to push through when it gets difficult. And it will get difficult. Your brain is the most sophisticated computer ever created, but it has one interesting quirk that most people never learn to use to their advantage. Your brain cannot tell the difference between something you're vividly experiencing and something you're vividly imagining. More importantly for our purposes, your brain cannot distinguish between actions you take because you feel a certain way and actions you take by choice regardless of how you feel. Here's what I mean by that. When you consistently act confident, your brain starts to wire itself for confidence. When you consistently act disciplined, your brain begins to create neural pathways that make discipline easier. When you consistently act like someone who values their time, their health, their relationships, and their future, your brain starts to automatically support those behaviors. The scientists today have a fancy name for this 1-7. They call it neuroplasticity. But I've been watching this principle work in people's lives for decades, long before anyone gave it a scientific name. I've seen people literally rewire their personalities, their habits, and their entire life trajectory simply by consistently choosing to behave like the person they wanted to become, even when they didn't feel like that person yet. Let me tell you about a farmer I knew years ago named Robert. When I first met Robert, he was struggling. His farm was barely profitable. He dressed in old torn clothes, and he carried himself like someone who had given up on better days. But Robert had a dream. He wanted to be known as the most successful farmer in his county. He wanted to own the finest farm equipment, have the most productive land, and be the person other farmers came to for advice. Most people would have told Robert to work harder, save more money, wait for better crop prices, or maybe take some classes. But Robert did something different. He decided to start behaving like the most successful farmer in the county right away. He went out and bought one good shirt and one good pair of pants Probably spent more on that outfit than he could afford at the time. Every morning he would put on those clothes before he went out to work his land. Even when he was just feeding the animals or fixing fence posts, he dressed like the successful farmer he intended to become. People thought he was crazy. His neighbors laughed at him for getting all dressed up to do farm work. But something interesting happened. When Robert dressed the part, he started thinking like the part. He began to see his farm not as it was, but as it could be. He started making different decisions about his land, his crops, his equipment. He began to carry himself with the confidence of someone who knew what he was doing. Within 2 years, Robert's farm was the most profitable in the county. Within 5 years, he was the person other farmers came to for advice. The clothes didn't make him successful, but choosing to behave like a successful person, starting with something as simple as how he dressed, began a transformation that changed everything. You see, Robert understood something that most people miss. He didn't wait to feel successful before he started acting successful. He didn't wait to be prosperous before he started behaving like a prosperous person. He started with his behavior, and his identity followed. This is the psychology behind all lasting change. Your identity is not some fixed thing you're born with. Your identity is simply the collection of beliefs you hold about yourself, and those beliefs are formed by the evidence you provide through your daily actions. Every time you act in a way that's consistent with who you want to become, you're casting a vote for that identity. Every time you act in a way that's inconsistent with your goals, you're casting a vote against the person you say you want to be. The problem is, most people are casting more votes against their desired identity than for it. They say they want to be healthy, but they vote against that identity every time they choose convenience over nutrition. They say they want to be wealthy, but they vote against that identity every time they spend impulsively instead of investing wisely. They say they want to be confident, but they vote against that identity every time they avoid challenges or stay quiet when they should speak up. But here's the beautiful thing about this system. You can start changing the votes immediately. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need to wait for the right moment. You don't need to feel ready. You can start casting votes for the person you want to become right now with your very next action. Let me share something that might surprise you. The most successful people I've known throughout my career all had one thing in common, but it wasn't what you might think. It wasn't that they were naturally gifted or that they came from wealthy families or that they got lucky breaks. The common thread was this: they all learned to act like the person they wanted to become before they became that person. I remember a young woman who attended one of my seminars. She was working as a receptionist, but dreamed of becoming a successful sales professional. She told me she was waiting to feel more confident before she would apply for sales positions. I asked her, what would a successful salesperson do every day? She listed things like reading sales books, practicing presentations, networking with industry professionals, studying successful companies, and always dressing professionally. I said, then start doing those things now. She protested that she wasn't in sales yet, that she didn't have access to sales training, that she didn't know the right people. I told her that's exactly why you need to start behaving like a salesperson now. You're not going to magically become confident the day someone gives you a sales job. Confidence comes from competence, and competence comes from consistent practice. 6 months later, she called to tell me she had not only landed a sales position, but had been hired at a salary higher than what she had initially hoped for. The hiring manager told her that what impressed him most was that she was already thinking and acting like a professional salesperson. She had prepared for the interview like a sales presentation. She had researched his company like a true professional would, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who belonged in that role. That's the power of acting as if. When you consistently behave like the person you want to become, you don't just change how you feel about yourself, you change how the world sees you and responds to you. But I need to warn you about something. When you start behaving above your current circumstances, some people aren't going to like it. They're going to accuse you of putting on airs, of thinking you're better than you are, of being fake or pretentious. Let me tell you why this happens and how to handle it. Most people are comfortable with you staying exactly as you are because your growth challenges their lack of growth. When you start improving yourself, you're holding up a mirror to their own excuses. When you start behaving like the person you want to become, you're proving that change is possible. And that makes them uncomfortable because they've convinced themselves that change is too hard or that success is only for other people. Don't let their discomfort derail your progress. Remember, you're not changing to make them feel better about themselves. You're changing to become the person you're capable of being. Their opinion of your growth is none of your business. Your job is to stay focused on becoming the person your future self needs you to be. The truth is, acting like the person you want to become isn't being fake, it's being intentional. It's recognizing that you have the power to choose your behaviors, and if you're going to choose anyway, you might as well choose behaviors that move you towards your goals rather than away from them. Every day, you're already acting like somebody. The question is, are you acting like the person who will create the life you want, or are you acting like the person who will keep you stuck where you are? The choice is always yours, and the time to choose is always now. Now that you understand why behaving like the person you want to become works so powerfully, let me give you the practical strategies that will help you implement this philosophy in your daily life. Because understanding without application is just entertainment. It's the application that creates transformation. Let's start with the foundation of all personal development: how you begin your day. You know, I've studied successful people for decades, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that how you start your morning determines the trajectory of your entire day. Successful people don't roll out of bed and stumble into their day hoping things work out. They design their mornings to create the mental and emotional state that serves their goals. If you want to become a disciplined person, you must start acting disciplined the moment you wake up. And the first test of discipline happens before you even get out of bed. When that alarm goes off, you have a choice. You can hit the snooze button and teach yourself that comfort is more important than commitment, or you can get up immediately and cast your first vote of the day for the disciplined person you want to become. I learned this lesson from a mentor of mine who told me, "Jim, how you do anything is how you do everything. If you can't win the battle with your alarm clock, how do you expect to win the battles that really matter?" That hit me hard because I realized I was starting every day by breaking a promise to myself. The promise to get up at a certain time. The successful people I know have morning routines that reflect their values and their goals. They don't just wake up and react to whatever the day throws at them. They wake up and proactively create the mindset they need to achieve what they want to achieve. Some read for 30 minutes, feeding their minds with ideas that will help them grow. Others exercise, proving to themselves first thing in the morning that they can push through discomfort to achieve a goal. Many spend time in quiet reflection or planning, connecting with their deeper purpose before the noise of the day takes over. But here's what you need to understand: these aren't just nice habits. They're identity-shaping behaviors. Every morning that you choose to read instead of scroll through social media, you're becoming the kind of person who values learning over entertainment. Every morning that you choose to exercise instead of staying in bed, you're becoming the kind of person who values health over comfort. Every morning that you choose to plan your day instead of just hoping it works out, you're becoming the kind of person who takes responsibility for their results. Let me tell you about the most powerful transformation tool I've ever discovered: books. If you want to accelerate your growth, if you want to start thinking like successful people think, you must develop the habit of reading books written by people who have achieved what you want to achieve. Reading isn't just about gaining information. It's about associating with great minds, learning from the experiences of others, and expanding your thinking beyond your current circumstances. The person you'll be 5 years from now will be determined by two primary influences: the people you associate with and the books you read. You can't always control who you spend time with in person, but you can always choose to spend time with great minds through their books. When you read a book by someone who has built a successful business, you're getting business mentorship. When you read a book by someone who has overcome major challenges, you're getting wisdom about resilience. When you read books about personal development, you're programming your mind with the thoughts and strategies that create success. I challenge you to commit to reading at least 10 pages of a good book every day. Not a magazine, not a newspaper, not social media posts. A book that will stretch your thinking and expand your possibilities. Do you realize that if you read just 10 pages a day, you'll read about 15 books a year? In 5 years, that's 75 books. Can you imagine how different your thinking would be if you spent time with 75 great minds over the next 5 years? But reading alone isn't enough. You must also change how you speak, because the words you use shape the thoughts you think, and the thoughts you think determine the actions you take. Successful people speak differently than unsuccessful people. They don't say, I can't afford it. They say, how can I afford it? They don't say, I don't have time. They say, that's not a priority right now. They don't say, I hope things work out. They say, I'll make sure things work out. Pay attention to your language for the next week. Notice how often you use words that position you as a victim of circumstances rather than as someone who creates circumstances. Words like, I have to, I can't, I don't have a choice, if only, I hope, I wish, someday, and I'll. Try these words program your mind for powerlessness. Start replacing them with words that reflect ownership and possibility. I choose to, I will, I'm committed to, I'm working on, I'm learning to, and I will find a way. Now let's talk about something that will either accelerate your growth or sabotage it completely. The people you choose to spend time with. You know, we become like the people we associate with most. If you spend time with people who complain, you'll find yourself complaining more. If you spend time with people who make excuses, you'll find yourself making more excuses. But if you spend time with people who are growing, learning, and pushing themselves to become better, you'll find yourself naturally raising your own standards. Here's what I want you to do. Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with and ask yourself, are these people living the kind of life I want to live? Are they growing toward goals that inspire me? Are they supportive of my dreams, or do they try to talk me out of my ambitions? Are they lifting me up or pulling me down? The answers to these questions will tell you whether your current associations are helping you become the person you want to be or keeping you stuck as the person you've always been. I'm not saying you need to abandon old friends, but I am saying you need to be intentional about who influences your thinking. You might need to spend less time with people who drain your energy and more time with people who inspire your growth. You might need to join groups, organizations, or communities where you can meet people who share your values and your commitment to improvement. Let's talk about money for a moment, because how you handle money reveals everything about your character and your future. If you want to become wealthy, you must start behaving like wealthy people behave with money long before you have wealth. Wealthy people track their money. They know where every dollar goes. They pay themselves first by saving and investing before they spend on anything else. They think long-term and make financial decisions based on what will serve their future, not just their immediate desires. I don't care if you're only making minimum wage right now. You can start behaving like a wealthy person with money today. Save something, even if it's just $5 a week. Track your expenses, even if they're minimal. Read books about money and investing, even if you don't have money to invest yet. These behaviors will prepare you for the wealth you're working to create, and they'll also change how you think about yourself in relation to money. The same principle applies to your health. If you want to be healthy, start making the food and exercise choices that healthy people make today. Don't wait until you feel motivated or until you have more time or until you can afford a gym membership. Healthy people make health a priority regardless of their circumstances. They find ways to move their bodies. They choose nutritious foods when possible. They prioritize sleep and they manage stress effectively. Time is another area where your behavior reveals your character. Successful people treat time like the precious, non-renewable resource at island. They plan their days in advance. They focus on high-value activities that move them toward their goals. They say no to good opportunities so they can say yes to great opportunities. They understand that being busy is not the same as being productive. Start treating your time like it matters. Plan your day the night before. Write down your priorities and stick to them. Eliminate activities that don't serve your goals or your values. Stop saying yes to every request for your time just because you want to be liked. Your time is your life, and how you use it determines what kind of life you create. Finally, let me share with you the most important behavior of all, the habit of consistent goal achievement. Successful people don't just set goals. They set goals they can achieve in the short term. They celebrate when they achieve them, and then they set slightly bigger goals. They create momentum through a series of small wins rather than hoping for one big breakthrough. Write down 3 goals you can achieve in the next 90 days. Not huge goals, but meaningful goals that would move you closer to the person you want to become. Then break each goal down into weekly action steps. Then break each weekly action step down into daily activities. This is how you turn dreams into reality. One day, one action, one small victory at a time. Remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. Every day that you choose to behave like the person you want to become, you're building the habits, the mindset, and the identity that will create the life you want. The compound effect of these daily disciplines will amaze you, but only if you start and only if you stay consistent. Now, let me tell you about the part of this transformation journey that nobody likes to talk about, but everybody needs to understand. It's going to get uncomfortable, and most people quit right when they're on the verge of their breakthrough. Here's what happens. You start behaving like the person you want to become, and for the first few weeks, maybe even the first few months, you feel excited, you're motivated, you're seeing some progress. But then something interesting occurs. The novelty wears off, and the real work begins. This is when your commitment gets tested, when your character gets revealed, and when most people give up and go back to their old patterns. The truth is, transformation isn't a straight line upward. It's more like the seasons. There are times of rapid growth, times of apparent stagnation, times of difficulty, and times of harvest. The people who succeed long-term are those who understand this rhythm and don't quit during the winter seasons of their development. I remember going through a particularly challenging period about 3 years into my own transformation. I had been consistently applying these principles, but I hit a wall where nothing seemed to be working. My income had plateaued, my confidence wavered, and frankly, I started questioning whether all this personal development stuff was just a bunch of positive thinking nonsense. That's when my mentor told me something that saved my future. Jim, the most dangerous time in anyone's development is right before their breakthrough, because that's when the pressure is greatest and the temptation to quit is strongest. He was right. 6 months later, everything started to accelerate. But only because I had learned to persist through the uncomfortable middle period where growth doesn't feel like growth. You need to expect resistance, not just from circumstances, but from the people around you. When you start behaving differently, when you start growing beyond where you've been, some people in your life aren't going to celebrate that growth. They're going to try to pull you back to where you were because your old self was comfortable and predictable. They knew how to relate to the old you. The new you challenges them, makes them question their own choices, and sometimes threatens relationships that were built on mutual limitation. Don't let their discomfort derail your progress. This is the price of growth, and it's worth paying. The people who truly care about you will adjust to your growth and celebrate your success. Those who can't adjust were never really supporting your best interests anyway. Here's what you must remember during the difficult times. The person you're becoming is always worth more than the comfort you're giving up. Every time you choose to behave like the person you want to become, instead of reverting to old patterns, you're building character muscle that can never be taken away from you. Create an environment that supports your new identity. Remove temptations that pull you backwards. Surround yourself with reminders of who you're becoming. Read biographies of people who overcame similar challenges. Join communities of people who share your commitment to growth. Make it easier to succeed than to fail by designing your environment to support your goals, rather than sabotage them. But most importantly, think beyond yourself. The person you become doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone whose life you touch. Your children are watching how you handle challenges and setbacks. Your colleagues are observing whether you're someone who grows or someone who makes excuses. Your community benefits when you become the best version of yourself and contribute at your highest level. This is legacy thinking, and it's what sustains you when motivation fades. You're not just transforming your own life, you're modeling what's possible for others. You're proving that change is achievable, that growth is worth the effort, that ordinary people can create extraordinary results through consistent, intentional behavior. So here's my final challenge to you. Stop waiting for the perfect moment and start behaving like the person you want to become today. Not tomorrow, not next Monday, not when you feel ready. Today. With your very next decision, your very next action, your very next word, the person you'll be 5 years from now is counting on what you do right now. The time for excuses is over. The time for waiting is over. The time for someday is over. Your future self is waiting, and they're depending on you to start becoming who they need you to be. The choice is yours, the power's in your hands, and the time is now. Who will you choose to be today?